Yesterday, a number of the members of the Abbey community and some of our guests went to an event called Community Mobilization, which was an opportunity for all the programs, the departments, the resources, the folks in our southern Pend Oreille County to sort of share what they do to try to curtail or to support the youth in our community as far as alcoholism, alcohol use, substance abuse, and things like that. And so it was kind of a networking symposium where all of these amazing programs and departments came together, and they had different panels. They were sharing on what type of services they offer, what type of advocacy programs and support, either medically, mentally, socially, financially, things like that, to get the kids involved in some really positive changes in their life and to try to track what's going on with the drug and alcohol use in our county. And to see that people are spending their entire life committed to trying to understand and to try to follow and to address this really serious issue, and that for the most part, one of the conclusions is that it's generational and familial. That is the family culture that sort of perpetuates the drug use and the alcoholism, as well as poverty and illiteracy. So there were many wonderful things that were shared. But part of the number of the panels were projects and programs that are being maintained and started by the Kalispel Indian tribe nation. And I was so taken. First of all, the whole symposium started with this beautiful chanting and drumming by the Frog Island Singers that was just so energetically grounding, and it just kind of cleared the space. It was so beautiful. Some of the elders and some of the young ones, it went on for about 10 or 15 minutes, like chanting in their native tongue, sort of the way that we chant, how it turns the mind and opens the mind up. It was really powerful. So last night after I came home, I was looking over my notes, and I just wanted to know more about the Kalispel Indian tribe. And because I've always had, as a European descent, I've always had a sadness in my mind on how the Europeans, the folks who came to this country when we started our manifest destiny and our staking the land and the, what's it called? The manifest destiny, the Monroe Doctrine. We started just going across the country, and irregardless of these native tribes, we ended up just basically taking their land from them. And we've heard all the stories. It's not the American history story, it's these other stories that have come to light, and how through their interaction with the European, the pioneers and our ancestors, is that you know, the alcohol was introduced, the violence with guns, the smallpox. They were taken out, put on reservations, walked hundreds of miles. Their language was suppressed. The children were taken out, taught how to learn English. Their traditions, their spiritual rituals were discouraged. And I kept going, God, this sounds a little bit like the Tibetan people. You know, this large, powerful entity sort of sweeping in and almost eradicating these incredible traditions of native people, sort of like the Chinese with the Tibetans. Not so, it was different in some ways because this country has tried to make over the years, has tried to make some reparation for what has happened to the native tribal nations in our country. But there was something very similar about the powerful entity coming in, and without breaking treaties and disregarding the cultures and not hearing the voices of those that they were meeting, how this 175 years of oppression and violence and struggles and poverty and sickness really came as a result of it. But what was so inspiring about being there yesterday is that the Kalispel Indian tribe, which is quite a small tribe, it only is a nation of 400, of which more than half of them are under 18 years of age. And only 54 of them are considered to be elders of the tribe, which is 55 or older. To see their incredible efforts on how to bring back the traditions. Because I haven't looked into it too much in detail, but from what I read last night is that most of our Indian tribal nations are sovereignties, in that they have a relationship with the U.S. government. They negotiate treaties, they negotiate settlements, they do business with the U.S. government, but they're self-governing. That they have their tribal council, they have their business council, they have lots of these councils that basically set up legislation. They're democratically appointed. Their guidelines within the reservations may or may not coincide with sort of the federal guidelines from, legalization of marijuana, to other things. They try, I think they hold similar values as the government does, but they basically self-govern themselves. And how they are trying very hard to, and because of that, my understanding is they don't get a lot of support, which is why we've had decades of intense poverty in a lot of our Indian reservations, because they don't get a lot of help. They've gotten, a lot of the land was unfarmable or horrible land where a lot of the reservations are. The Kalispel happened to have a beautiful amount of reservation up there. They're about 25 miles from the Abbey, so they're quite close to us. So what they've been doing, part of the panel, there were a number of these different types of systems that they have in place that help the children, help the parents, help the economics, help to sustain the natural resources, help to protect the wildlife habitat. They've got a large bison herd up there. They have tried to really grow their culture as far as fishing and basket making and traditional dancing and bringing the Salish language back into the community, and dealing with the alcohol and the drug abuse through some very it sounds like very proactive intervention in with the families, trying to support kind of a self-sustaining economy within the reservations, within this particular reservation. I'm not sure about the other reservations in the country, but this is the one I'm particularly struck by. So what they have is they've got a tribal court which supports the tribe, reserves the tribal sovereignty, reserves their rights, their religious, cultural, and traditional practices, yet encourages individual responsibility for life choices. They really encourage mutual respect among the members of the community. And once again, they've had this sovereignty. This sovereignty as being nations existed long before we came here. So that all the American tribes in this country sort of were self-governing. What they did with each other and the relationships with each other, they had harmony, they had wars, they did everything that nations do. But they had this sovereignty of self-governorship far earlier than when we met them. So that's something that was very, very helpful to know. The Kalispel Indians received this reservation, or got the land, back in 1914, which is where their sovereign status was sort of recognized by the U.S. government. It has the power to create its own government, its own laws, maintains ownership of its resources that were established through treaties and by presidential executive orders. So a lot of this came through the federal government. And as the years have gone on, they've been able to purchase land. They've got almost, right now, they've got 5,200 acres in Usk and Ione and Cusick, and they have up to almost 2 million acres that they do forest management, protection, water rights, wildlife habitat, protection of natural resources, mineral rights, and things like that. So they're very, very involved stewards of the land that they have been able to repurchase back. Let's see, there was something that was really quite, so they have their tribal, they have a place called the Young People's Place, which supplies housing for orphaned and displaced tribal children. It's kind of a transitional housing. They have a beautiful facility here in Cusick. The place that we had the conference was at the Camus Center for Wellness, which because they have been so poor and they have had difficulty having any employment, part of where they get, well, most of where their income comes is from the Northwest Casino, which is in Airway Heights, which is owned by the Kalispel tribe, which fosters millions of dollars every year, which they put directly back into the community. And so they've built this Camus Wellness Center, which has this young people's place. It's got a gymnasium, it's got a beautiful pool, it's got a full dental clinic, it's got a medical clinic, it's got mental health facilities, it's got a beautiful garden, it's got an early child learning center, it's got an elder care so that as their elders get older they can take care of them with assisted living and things like that. The one thing that is, let's see, they also have, it's called a charitable trust, where they have contributed $7 million into the local community. So you can actually go on their website, and if you have an event or you have a project that you want to do and that you need funds for in either education, social justice, nutrition, child care, environment, that you can actually apply for monies from the Kalispel tribe to be able to fund your project and your program. So they've contributed back into the non-Indian community of South Pend Oreille and Spokane County. So they give back. But their website is very hopeful, it's very inspiring, it's very well put together, and it's they're doing a lot to help sustainability of their own culture and of their own economics, to be responsible for their own well-being. I'm not sure whether they get to vote. I'm not sure whether they're, quote, U.S. citizens because they are a nation unto themselves. That would be interesting to know. But I was really quite inspired by their courage and their commitment to sort of reclaim their heritage through technology, through economic security. You know, whether gambling is one of the ways that I ethically could ever justify, you know, sustaining my life. And, you know, it's kind of ironic, the karma ripening of how most of the people who come to their gambling casinos are those of European descent. So we're kind of having a little bit of a dependent relationship going on here. But to see their support of trying to keep their communities healthy, and by extension the community of South Pend Oreille County. And so we have a lot to learn from them, and they have had a lot to grow from in response to their relationship to us, and they're also giving back to the community at large. So it seems like there's a healing of old wounds in some way that I find very very powerful. And yeah, so I wanted to share, and we are surrounded, where we live at the Abbey, we have at least 7 Indian tribal nations here in our area, and hopefully they are all being able to thrive and to grow and to heal the wounds of the past, and to really show them a great amount of respect for their endeavors to be able to deal with some very deep difficulties and challenges. And this tribe in particular, the Kalispel Indian Nation, seems to be doing quite beautifully in reclaiming that great heritage and their great wisdom and compassion.